if I might tell you, an X-rated radio show that I did live. It was Arch Obler's Lights Out, in which it featured Agnes Moorehead and a man named Wally Mayer, and I had a supporting part. I was a scientist, as I often was a scientist. And we, in those days, my phrase, as you all know, you understand why I keep saying as you all know, because I know that you all know what we did, except for the guests who come in and who've read about the newspaper. For those, incidentally, I must forgive me. For those of you who don't know the machinations of radio live, we had an East Coast and a West Coast program. We, on the West Coast, would do a show, for instance, at 5 o'clock in the afternoon so that it could be heard at 8 o'clock in the evening on the East Coast, and then 3 hours later we would have to do it at 8 o'clock live again for the West Coast, because the time structure would just not permit us to do it. If we did it at 8 o'clock on the West Coast, it means people in New York would be hearing it at 11 o'clock. And conversely, people who did shows in New York, like Cavalcade of America, would do shows at 12 midnight. So it would reach the West Coast at 9 o'clock. Now that was their repeat live show. I emphasize live as I go back to the Lights Out experience. Now this was at 5 o'clock in the afternoon to be reached East Coast at 8 o'clock. And the story this particular day was there was a giant chemical that had gotten loose. Lights Out, as Arch Obler shows, are always scary and horrific and science fiction. And a giant chemical had gotten out somehow, and huge holes in the countryside developed. Huge cavities. So this one scene involving Agnes Moorehead and Wally Mayer and myself was a group of scientists coming to this series of holes, and we looked at it, and my line was, that's a strange chemical reaction. And this is live. Now, if you'll recall, this happened to be, incidentally, the very same studio when I walked in and won my part on Bethel Meriday 4 or 5 years before. And in that very same booth was sitting Arch Obler and the engineer and the secretary and a production man or lady. And so we're on the air, and on comes the scene, and now is my line. Now Agnes is standing right in front of me, this way, facing me. The booth is here. And I'm standing here, Wally is there, Agnes is right here, and I'm standing opposite. This is 44 mic, and got the mic here, and my line is dialogue, and then my line is, that's a strange chemical erection. And I looked across the mic at her, and I mouthed, naturally whispered, "Did I say that?" And Agnes nodded. And I looked to my right, and in the booth, nobody was in the booth. They were all down on the floor. And it seemed like hours had occurred. It was only a second, because naturally, the professionalism of Wally, whom I think had the next line, he immediately answered the line he should answer, and the people didn't know. And there was never a call from the east, or did I hear what I heard? Nothing. Because they may have thought they heard, that's a strange chemical reaction. And then 3 hours later, we had to go back and do it again live for the West Coast. And my hand was shaking like this, But I did it. I did it right. Did it correct. Now that really happened. You've heard of other bloopers, and you've heard of things for the past few. That really happened.